Good afternoon. I'm Lori Matson, President and CEO of the Tri-City Regional Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for joining us for the virtual Congressional Update with Congressman Dan Newhouse. The COVID-19 pandemic has people across the country turning to the government for aid. Today, Congressman Newhouse will update us on the numerous ways he's assisting his constituents to ensure our economy remains resilient and thriving into the future. The Chamber has been working tirelessly throughout the past 5 months to help our members and the community. One of the most impactful initiatives we've been engaged with is the Tri-Cities Open and Safe Coalition, where we're partnering with TriDec, Visit Tri-Cities, and the Benton Franklin Health Department. I hope you'll visit tcopenandsafe.com to find up-to-date resources and guidelines for reopening your business and staying safe. We're currently partnering with the Minority Business Development Agency to distribute 100 PPE kits to local minority and women-owned businesses. We still have about 50 kits remaining, so if you're a minority or woman-owned business located in Benton or Franklin County, please contact the Chamber so we can provide you with a PPE kit. The Chamber continues to maintain a COVID-19 resource guide, which is updated each week. We also offer the Rapid Response Phone Line, a free resource for business owners to obtain one-on-one help. Please visit tricityregionalchamber.com for this information and much more. Though the local business community has been hit hard by this health crisis, we're thrilled that businesses are still joining and engaging with our organization for the first time. I have the pleasure of welcoming the Chamber's newest members. CKB, Ziply Fiber, Tri-Fun, Pacific Northwest Family Law, Tri-City Welcome Basket, and Hutchbug Solutions. Thank you all for joining the Chamber. Our final piece of Chamber business is to announce our August Member of the Month. Since May, the Chamber's Awards and Recognition Committee has chosen to recognize businesses that have positively impacted our community during this trying time. I'm pleased to announce that the committee has chosen GISA Credit Union as the August Member of the Month. GISA was chosen for numerous reasons. They were among the first to facilitate PPP loans in the Tri-Cities. This provided significant relief for hundreds of businesses in our community, supporting over 3,000 local jobs. GISA also stepped up right away to sponsor our first ever virtual luncheon in June, State of Education with Superintendent Chris Reichdahl. Finally, the team at GISA has been a great partner with our Chamber for over 30 years. They were a founding sponsor of our economic gardening program. Members of their team have served on our board of directors and have been active participants in our ambassador club. We're fortunate to have GISA Credit Union as a member of the Regional Chamber and our community. Congratulations to GISA, August Member of the Month. So if you've attended our annual Congressional Update Luncheon over the past few years, you'll recall that we've had some fun with Representative Newhouse by asking trivia questions about the Congressman. We're going to do that again in a few minutes, but before we do that, let's hear from our luncheon sponsor and to introduce our Congressman. So please help me welcome the Director of the Pacific Northwest National Lab, Dr. Steve Ashby.
Thank you very much, Lori. It's great to be with everyone today, albeit virtually. And on behalf of Patel, which proudly operates the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory for the Department of Energy, it's our pleasure to sponsor today's luncheon with a very special guest, Congressman Dan Newhouse. I would like to begin by recognizing the Tri-City Regional Chamber for its partnership and advocacy. We all benefit from your leadership and enduring support, and we appreciate the critical role you play in helping make the Tri-Cities the great community that it is. I also wish to commend you, Lori, on your leadership of the My Tri 2030 community visioning effort. You and all involved should be proud of the work that you are doing to lead us into the future. Thank you too to the Chamber for hosting virtual events like this one. Today's luncheon is a great opportunity to hear directly from those who represent our interest in Congress. Mid-August was a particularly busy and impactful time for the Tri-Cities with a wave of fruitful engagements with our elected officials, sponsors, and other key stakeholders. Last week, TRIDEC hosted its annual congressional staff tour virtually and had a terrific turnout, including staff representing Congressman Newhouse. This annual visit is an important opportunity to engage with those who support our elected officials and help enable their success. And the week before that, had many of us on overdrive. First, Congressman Newhouse convened Central Washington's nuclear energy industry and research leaders for a roundtable discussion on the future of nuclear power in our region. We share the Congressman's hope to see Central Washington leading the nation in the research, design, and deployment of innovative new nuclear technologies with support from the Department of Energy and in partnership with industry. The next day, the Tri-Cities was well represented at the virtual Federal Affairs Summit hosted by the Association of Washington Business. This annual meeting brings together members and staff from Washington state and federal congressional delegations with senior business leaders from across the state to collaborate on our top issues and opportunities. And the balance of the week was spent in dedicated visits with Energy Secretary Dan Briette and Undersecretary Paul DeBar visiting Hanford and PNL, accompanied by Representatives Dan Newhouse and Kathy McMorris Rogers. We're already well aware of the positive outcomes of these visits thanks to the great coverage by the Tri-City Herald and other local news outlets. It's gratifying to see the Secretary take note of the significant progress at Hanford and the waste treatment immobilization plant. And of course, we at PNL took great pride in having DOE leadership on our campus for a variety of events, including the signing of a new memorandum of understanding with the state of Washington to accelerate energy storage, followed by an event to dedicate the site of the planned DOE grid storage launch pad and to recognize the great progress we're making in the construction of the Energy Sciences Capability Project. From the beginning, these two unique scientific facilities have been a collaborative effort with DOE. We also acknowledge and appreciate the support of our congressional delegation, including Congressman Newhouse, and the funding provided by Congress for these projects. And the past 2 weeks underscore what we all know. The Tri-Cities is thriving and has an exciting future. And a consistent thread connecting these engagements and advancements is the thoughtful leadership of Congressman Dan Newhouse, a tireless advocate for the Tri-Cities and a friend to all of us. It is therefore with great pleasure that I get the opportunity to introduce Congressman Newhouse. Dan is a lifelong resident of Central Washington who represents the 4th District in the House of Representatives. He's a 3rd-generation Yakima Valley farmer who brings real-world experience to Congress as a businessman and former state legislator. He serves on the House Committee of Appropriations, including subcommittees on energy and water development, homeland security, and the legislative branch. These important committee assignments reflect both his influence and the respect he commands from his colleagues and House leadership. His strong support of our community is evident in the work he does every day on our behalf in the House, where he shines a light on the critical issues facing our community, advocates for funding for our national laboratory and the Hanford cleanup, and champions ways to grow our future workforce among many other topics. It's an honor to have him with us virtually today, so please join me in welcoming Congressman Dan Newhouse.
Thank you so much, Steve, and thanks for all of the nice compliments and all of the partnership that you and your team out at Pacific Northwest National Lab provide to the Chamber. And hello, Dan, it's great to see you. It's great to see you both, actually, even if it's just virtually. We thank you for continuing this long tradition of providing the congressional update during our August luncheon. So as Dr. Ashby mentioned, we've got some trivia questions. So these questions are going to appear on the screen, and members of our virtual audience will have about 10 seconds to answer. So let's learn some more about our congressman and get to our first question. First question is, true or false, Dan has 3 pets. So click if you think it's true or false. Hopefully we've got our audience playing along with us. We'll see the majority of the responses pop up here in just a few seconds. All right, so Dan, most people think you do, 76%. So is that true or false?
So that is true. If you include my daughter, she has a little dachshund that we call Napoleon. She and he are living in the house right for this short period of time. I've got a dog, Casper, who's totally blind, and then a one-eyed cat named Mango. So
Okay. Well, that's great. Everybody should have a pet or two, right? So
yeah,
great,
right. Yeah.
great to know. And a visiting pet as well. That's great of you. All right, our next question is, Dan can be seen briefly as an extra in the movie Animal House. So tell us if you think this is true or false. Can't wait to hear the background about this one.
Yeah, yeah.
So we'll see what people think about this. Just a minute. All right. Well, most people don't think that's the case. Dan, were you an extra in the movie Animal House?
Well, obviously, with 42% of the people out there, I've got some work to do on my what people think of me. But that is not true. That's a false statement. Although
Okay.
I was part of a fraternity at Washington State University, Alpha Gamma Rho, and I actually went to work in the national office right out of school. So I was the very first director of chapter services, and through that was able to travel around the country visiting chapters and universities, and it was really a great job. Gave me, I think, a good foundation for being able to work within an organization with people, and actually taught me a lot about advocating for the industry of agriculture. So it was a great experience, but not Animal House, sorry.
That's great. All right, well, that's great information. All right, our third question is, Dan has visited Camp David. Check if you think this is true or false. We'll see what people think about this answer here in a second. All right, well, that's a large majority. People think you have visited Camp David, so is that true?
Well, that one actually is true, so good job. I was invited to go to Camp David. In fact, my wife and I both were able to go meet with a small group of White House officials to talk about some of the issues that we're facing. And, that was just a remarkable opportunity. I'm very, very glad that the president invited me to do that. It's an interesting place. You probably know the history of it. Franklin Roosevelt started that. He called it Shangri-La, and it's full of history. In fact, one of the places, just real quickly, there's a porch there where they told us that's where FDR and Churchill sat and talked about a lot of the things. World War II, obviously, is going on. And some of the discussion on that porch were decisions made around D-Day. And so a very interesting place to be.
What a great opportunity to visit such a historical place. All right, our last question is, Dan has a diminished sense of smell unrelated to COVID-19. Do you think this is true or false? We'll see what people have to think about this answer here in a second, and we'll get the backstory on this. All right, true. All right, Dan, is that true or false?
Well, I can't explain it, and it isn't due to COVID-19. My father had the same peculiar thing happen. I've pretty much lost most of my sense of smell. The real strong things I can smell, but so just with that information, don't ever waste a $100 bottle of wine on me, because I won't be able to appreciate it. But that's why I like hops so much. They're a strong pungent odor, as you probably know, and so we're picking hops right now, and that's something that I can smell, and I really appreciate that.
Well, good. Well, thanks again for being a good sport and playing this game with us and helping us to learn a little bit more about you. And I'm going to turn it over to you, Congressman, so you can make your presentation to us. And again, thank you, Dr. Ashby, for your sponsorship today. It's all yours, Dan.
Okay. Thank you, Lori. Thank you, Steve. Appreciate very much the warm welcome, and it's always fun to play the game, and you get to know a little bit more about me. Sometimes too much, probably, but it's always fun to do. I want to thank you too, Lori, you and the Chamber, for everything that you do, all the hard work that you always put forth on behalf of our community. It's truly a remarkable thing, and particularly in the times that we're going through right now, it's really important for all of our small businesses and our whole community. So thank you very much for that. It's always a pleasure to be at this luncheon to give you a congressional update. It's difficult this year, but thanks to technology, we can still do it. So that's a great thing. I'd certainly much rather be there with you in person. We'd all rather be together in person, I think, but we'll do what we can and get through this and continue on. And hopefully next year we'll be able to be together. I think there's going to be some time for questions at the end of my short presentation. So we'll definitely leave some time, but let me just talk about a few things that are going on. And one thing that's on everybody's mind, I think, is the pandemic that we're all experiencing. The coronavirus, the COVID-19 pandemic has truly impacted and affected every aspect of our lives. We can truly say that. Certainly throughout Central Washington, I see that in all of our communities. And all of you on today's meeting, as business owners, as community leaders, you're all on the front lines of this. And let me just say, I greatly appreciate how all of you have been working very hard, not only to help your employees, but also to help if you have customers, that customer base, do as much as you can to help them as well. And your efforts to make sure everyone stays safe and healthy has certainly been no easy feat. And thank you very much for everything you've done there. This virus, and I guess you could say our country's response, you tell me if you think this is not a true statement, but I think it's unlike anything that we've ever gone through before. For I think all of us, it truly is uncharted territory. We've certainly come to rely on the internet more than we ever did before, as meetings, as roundtables, as chamber luncheons, everything you can think of. Even classrooms are transferring to meeting online. So that's been a great thing to have available to us, but also has provided us some challenges. But perhaps the most devastating impact that I think all of you could say that we have seen has truly been on our economy. Congress has acted quickly to provide relief to American families, to small businesses, the employees. We've tried to do as much as we can by passing several pieces of legislation, including the CARES Act, which was mentioned earlier, which many of you and many of the financial institutions helped through the Paycheck Protection Program. So I hope that was helpful to many of you that are listening today. As you know, the PPP was intended to act as a bridge to help small businesses survive the pandemic, and I hope the impact of it was positive and seen as something that was worthwhile. We also worked very hard to deliver critical personal protection equipment, the PPE that we all know about now, to all of our states to keep the essential workers safe and on the job. We've increased testing capabilities for our local communities. We've tried to distribute as much as possible the life-saving equipment to our nation's hospitals and provide the necessary resources to safely develop an effective vaccine as quickly as possible. You probably heard of Operation Warp Speed. There's a lot of things in the pipeline right now that are being worked on very quickly to get to a vaccine as quickly as possible. But despite the huge strides that we're making together to combat the virus, we obviously have a lot of challenges. One, our governor's sweeping restrictions on certainly Benton and Franklin counties, but counties throughout the state, which have crippled our ability to revive our economy. There's a lot of inconsistencies, I think, and a lot of one-size-fits-all directives that have been difficult for local communities to deal with. Since the beginning of the shutdown, which was back in March, I've advocated for local decision-making, especially when it comes to the livelihoods of business owners and their employees. our essential employees, from grocery store clerks to nurses and other healthcare professionals, truly are working every single day. And I've witnessed strong leadership by, like I said, the organizations such as the Tri-City Chamber, the Regional Chamber of Commerce, in urging folks to comply with the guidance in order to reopen as safely and as quickly as possible. And I think we've seen a great effort on many people's parts to help accomplish that. And it's proven to pay off. I've also seen a lot of assistance provided by local chambers of commerce in a very important way, and that's to help guide businesses towards the resources that are available at the federal and the state level. And so that's been a tremendous service also provided by local chambers. But still, we find our communities struggling. And I agree that Congress needs to provide relief for those whose lives have been dramatically affected, both by the COVID-19 virus as well as the subsequent shutdowns that we've all experienced. Now, you probably already know this because it's been in the news a lot, but Congress has virtually come to a stalemate in negotiating the next round of relief for the COVID-19 virus. And this is, it's election year, things are becoming very political, but I think it's totally unacceptable for us to be in this situation. I've advocated all along that Congress has to work together in a bipartisan way in order to provide the kind of direct, targeted relief to individuals and to the families and to businesses who have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. And the best way for communities to get through this certainly is together. And that, I think, holds true for Congress as well. We should not, we cannot let divisive or partisan policy arguments and provisions prevent us from ensuring our country can emerge as strong as possible and as quickly as possible from this pandemic. So with that in mind, I've continued to advocate for Central Washington and our priorities. I've introduced legislation, it's called the FIRST Act, which will allow businesses to take tax deductions for ordinary business expenses that are paid with the PPP funds. I think allowing businesses to deduct payments for expenses like utilities and for rent fulfills what I see as the congressional intent of the program and keeps us from tying the hands of business owners when they go to file their taxes for 2020. I've also worked across the aisle with the United States Department of Agriculture to make sure that farmers and ranchers and farm workers remain protected as they work very hard to produce and harvest food for our country and for nations around the world. We truly have to continue to ensure that our food supply chain remains strong and stable. I'm sure you all saw at the beginning of this pandemic, many instances of what can happen if we don't protect that supply chain. We saw empty shelves, nationwide shortages of some food and other products. And I think that was an eye-opening experience for a lot of Americans. And as we know, and we've seen in Central Washington, the ag industry doesn't and really cannot afford to stop producing food for the American people. And I believe that this pandemic, and I'm always trying to be optimistic, and I see a silver lining to this dark cloud, but I think it's truly made Americans realize that they're, at least most Americans, that realize that their food just does not magically appear on grocery store shelves. But our food supply chain is absolutely vital to our national security. Lastly, as you know, there's been a lot of debate over the supplemental federal unemployment funds for states. The original allocation was $600 a week. That expired at the end of last month. There are ongoing negotiations. Part of the stalemate is over that. But we want to ensure that our governments can continue to help make whole as much as closely as possible that we can, the workers who have lost their jobs or have been having their hours reduced as a result of the pandemic. As many of you know, I'm sure, the Washington State Department of Employment Security has faced a lot of challenges in distributing these unemployment funds. From unfulfilled claims, I've got a lot of constituents that are calling us. I'll talk to you about that, but also to massive losses due to fraudulent claims, which is very unfortunate. We've worked with hundreds of our neighbors throughout Central Washington who did not receive their unemployment payments for some of them up to 6 months. And that's just, in my mind, just unacceptable. If we're going to be able to try to provide additional unemployment payments, we've got to make sure that they are distributed as securely and as efficiently and as quickly as possible. The president, as you realize, probably have seen, has signed several executive orders that allow the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, to provide funds to states for additional unemployment payments. But as with any government account or effort, those funds certainly are limited and will be limited as to how much they'll be helpful. But I think we could all agree that we would prefer that every worker who is filing for unemployment would be back at their jobs full time. I think that's the best thing that we can work toward, and I'll continue to do everything I can to ensure that we get to that point without leaving our families in financial ruin. I wish I could tell you how long this will take for this next round of the COVID-19 relief package. But with the election coming up, with all of these different things that are happening, the dynamic around this negotiation is truly unpredictable. And so we've got a couple of months that I think that time is just going to be up in the air, and I'll keep you as informed as I possibly can on that. Now I can't speak to the Tri-City Regional Chamber without mentioning the incredible work that's being done out at the Hanford site in partnership with our local communities. It truly is amazing. And every opportunity I get to show what's happening at Hanford to my colleagues, to members of the administration, I absolutely take advantage of doing so. Just last week, I was proud to be able to welcome the U.S. Department of Energy Secretary to Central Washington. Dan Newhouse was here, where he saw firsthand the progress that truly is being made at Hanford. Due to the hard work of all of the people out at Hanford that are in that workforce, we are very close to beginning the processing of waste at the waste treatment plant. And that's truly going to be a monumental step forward in our cleanup efforts. Now, as you mentioned, Steve, I'm a member of the House Appropriations Committee, and that's a great place to be able to help influence and affect the funding that comes to the Hanford cleanup. The number's huge, as you know, but it's absolutely necessary. A lot of my work there includes the educating my fellow members about the significance of what it is we're doing at Hanford and the Hanford cleanup. And truly, I have to remind on a regular basis colleagues from around the country who don't have that personal connection of the moral and the legal obligation that the federal government truly does have to complete this cleanup as safely and efficiently as possible. It's an ongoing effort, but one that we've been successful at so far. And we have great partnerships with some other states. Certainly members of our Senate delegation have been great partners in this effort as well. And it truly is a team effort to do this. You all understand how important the cleanup efforts are to our area. I don't have to convince you, but I'm hopeful, and I know that this is a true statement. Secretary Bruyette now was able to see why our country is desperately in need of not only finishing this work, but having a permanent waste depository. And that has been identified, and the legal waste depository for this country is at Yucca Mountain. Making that a reality will continue to be one of the priorities of mine, to work very hard on that issue to make it happen. I was also very delighted to be able to join the secretary at the Pacific Northwest National Laboratory, where he was on hand to help us dedicate the site of the new grid storage launch pad, which is a major investment by the federal government. And I can't not mention also and acknowledge the state of Washington's role and an important contribution. Both federal and state efforts are helping the United States win. I guess we could call, Dr. Ashby, maybe we could call this the battery arms race. This is going to be a huge step forward in that. I work in the Appropriations Committee to help secure the funding for this launch pad, because we all know energy storage is absolutely critical for our nation's independence and security. So I'm proud the administration recognized the expertise of the scientists and the researchers at PNNL, because they truly are leading the way for our country's energy independence strategies. Speaking of energy independence, one issue that we continue to face, and certainly I was very pleased to see the final environmental impact statement that was released just recently as it pertains to the Columbia River system operations. Truly, in central Washington, our river system, our dams are the economic lifeblood of our communities. The final EIS, if you saw it, the work was conducted over several years by federal scientists and researchers from a number of federal agencies. And it stated what we have known to be true all along, that dams and fish, which are important, both are very important, but they can coexist. We all know our dams are an incredible source of clean and renewable energy, which creates reliable and affordable electricity for our homes and our businesses. They also provide countless other benefits that have transformed central Washington and the Pacific Northwest from an arid desert to the productive agricultural region that it is today. So this EIS report was truly welcome news, but as we all know, the fight is not over, and we'll continue to do everything we can to make sure that we can keep these important pieces of our infrastructure in place. Hydropower is not yet a federally recognized source of renewable energy, and I've strongly advocated that our country invest in our water infrastructure and continued hydropower innovation. Just earlier this week, we celebrated the National Hydropower Day, where I was able to share some of the benefits of hydropower and what it provides our region. And I highlighted the recent visits of the U.S. Department of Interior Secretary, David Bernhardt, to Grand Coulee Dam. Secretary Bernhardt was able to see firsthand just how valuable our dams along the Columbia and Snake Rivers are. And I truly look forward to continue working with my colleagues in Congress and in the administration to advance our hydropower priorities. With all of that, Congress has a lot to do before the end of the 116th session. With the looming fiscal year deadlines, the House and the Senate need to pass all 12 appropriation bills to ensure the government remains funded. We must continue to work to provide COVID-19 relief to American families and workers. Legislation I've introduced to address the crisis of missing and murdered Indigenous women in Central Washington and across the country continues to await a vote on the House floor, but we'll continue to keep advocating for that. And I'm still cautiously optimistic that we can continue to urge the Senate to take action on the agriculture labor reform that was passed by the House just late last year, the Farm Worker Modernization Act. And hopefully we can get that done and make progress on that yet before the end of the 116th Congress. There's a lot more that I could share about what I'm doing to ensure the federal government listens to our Central Washington communities, but I'd like to hear from those of us that are on the call today on the virtual meeting. And I think we have some questions that were submitted, perhaps, don't we? So I think this would be a good time to try to answer some of those. I think, is it up to me? I'm proud, I think, to introduce Dr. Ashby, Lori.
I'm happy to rejoin you.
And, well, thank you, Steve. And thank you. Let me just say again, thanks for all you do for the Tri-Cities. It truly is. I often tell my colleagues that Pacific Northwest National Laboratory it's the best national lab in the country. And I know you play a huge role in our communities, which is just awesome. With Patel's recent donation to the Mid-Columbia STEM Nexus initiative, I know the brilliant scientists and the researchers at the lab will continue to inspire and educate our young people, which is our future. So thank you so much for everything you do to influence a positive future for us. So Dr. Ashby, are there any questions that we can address?
There are. Well, thank you for those kind words. We're really proud to be in such a welcoming and supportive community and have someone like you as our congressman. A great update, so thank you for that. The Chamber did ask for several questions, and we have a few that came in advance for you. The first question is, quote, I am very concerned that full support is not being given to the U.S. Postal Service. What will you do to help implement the financial needs of all of us affected by the virus, as well as the loss of postal services?
Good question. Well, as you all know, this is over the last several weeks, it's been a pretty hot topic. But let me just say, I'm worried that there's a lot of unnecessary panic happening around the operations of the United States Postal Service. That's not to say that the post office isn't facing some financial distress. It is. It has been for a long time, I think for decades. As you know, the Postal Service is a self-funded, independent agency. It operates through the revenue they receive from the sale of stamps, postage, parcel deliveries, the services they provide. And as we all know, since the rise of the internet, the volume of mail has been steadily declining. But I believe, particularly in our rural areas, the Postal Service is vital. They're often the only carrier that will deliver that final mile. So many of the things that are shipped by other carriers get to the post office. The post office takes it the rest of the way. Our employees, postal employees, are responsible not only for packages and mail, but also for delivering ballots for our elections. And due to our state's vote by mail system. So anyone who claims that the Postal Service is at risk of not being equipped to handle our state's upcoming November election, I think is just simply mistaken. The fact of the matter is that, well, like I said, while they continue to face challenges, and they do, they are currently sitting on over $14 billion in cash on hand, which they tell us is enough to keep them solvent for about one more year, if nothing else changes. But in the meantime, my office has helped hundreds of constituents during my short time in Congress who've experienced delays or different struggles with the Postal Service. And I've supported a $10 billion loan to the Postal Service that was authorized in the CARES Act earlier this year, but they have not yet seen it necessary to use those funds, but that's available. So that's over $24 billion that they have available to them if necessary. As you know, last Saturday, in an unprecedented Saturday session, the Speaker called Congress back to Washington, D.C. on a bill that would provide another $25 billion to the Postal Service, but it would also have prohibited them from making any changes to the operations until after the pandemic. So while long-term help is, I think, necessary, I voted against that bill last Saturday because I don't think that throwing massive amounts of money at this problem without addressing some of the underlying reasons for why the Postal Service is in the shape they are in would be a helpful or a responsible use of taxpayer dollars. So while empowering the Postal Service to make reforms and become more efficient, I think we should do that so that they can continue to deliver mail to every single household in America throughout the pandemic, through the election, and beyond that as well.
Thank you very much for that answer. The second question is related to something you mentioned in your comments. And the question is, what actions is Congress taking pertaining to President Trump's executive order to defer Social Security payroll taxes?
So the short answer there is probably not much. Certainly that's an idea the president has been keen on. I haven't heard a lot of support for the idea moving forward, but it's part of the discussion. As you know, that's one of the solutions, I guess, that are on the table and being discussed as a possible route to go. He took that action when negotiations between the House and Senate really fell apart, and saw it as one way to jumpstart the economy and get Americans back to work. But I believe that one of Congress's responsibilities to seniors is to ensure that Social Security and Medicare remain solvent. In order to accomplish that, we've got to get our economy back up and running. We have to get our federal spending under control as well, so that we can avoid any kind of mandatory across the board cuts that would impact negatively those programs and other things. And we have to ensure that we have a stable workforce to continue to contribute to those accounts as well. For years, American workers have paid into Social Security with the promise that those funds would be there for them when they needed them. And that's a commitment by the federal government. And I'm committed to ensuring that these funds remain solvent, so the federal government can continue to deliver those earned benefits to seniors across Central Washington and across the country. So I expect that this will continue to be part of the negotiations. And like I said before, I can't predict when this next relief package will come to fruition, but a lot of different things are being discussed that could possibly be a part of it.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, can you give your theory on gun control in America during the pandemic?
Well, interesting. Let me just say I'm a strong supporter of the Second Amendment, and I believe that we should absolutely enforce our existing laws pertaining and around gun control. I've worked very hard in Congress to improve and expand databases for criminal background checks and enforcing reporting requirements of criminal activity. You know, the last thing any of us want to have happen is for guns to fall into the hands of criminals, but that does not mean that we should infringe upon the constitutional rights of our law-abiding citizens. So it's a balance, right? I also know that with a lot of people being stuck at home, unable to work, unable to socialize, the rates of domestic violence and assault and other violent crimes have from watching some of the numbers in the cities have been staggeringly high throughout the pandemic. And that's very concerning. That's just one of the, I think, many reasons of why we need to reopen our society as quickly as possible.
Okay, thank you. Perhaps I'll take the prerogative of asking one last question before turning it back over to Lori, which is, earlier in your remarks, you were commenting on how the pandemic is really changing how we have to live and work and interact with one another. I was curious, when you reflect on it, what has most impressed you about Central Washingtonians' response to the pandemic?
That's I made the comments that that getting through this together, which you hear lots of commercials and different things that we'll get through this together, but it's truly it is a true statement. And I think I've seen our communities truly come together at a time when a lot of people are struggling. I've been to several of the food banks over the last few months, and it's amazing how not only how much food is being donated by a lot of generous people, and cash too, money, but how truly how many people are having to take advantage of the food bank contributions. And so it really is an amazing thing to see our communities come together as they have. Another thing that I've noticed, Dr. Ashby, and maybe some of you probably have seen the same thing, that in kind of a literal but symbolic way, I think people have rediscovered what the dining room table is meant to be used for. And we're spending a lot more time with our families and rediscovering each other as a member of our families. And I think that that's been a really positive thing as well, that to truly cherish these moments that we have together. I think at some point we're going to look back and think that was a really good thing that came out of the pandemic. It's bad to be cooped up and businesses to be closed and all those kind of things, absolutely. But there surely have been a lot of good things to celebrate by being forced to be close to our families again in ways that we a lot of times just didn't have time to do before.
Well, thank you very much for your remarks and for answering those questions. And Lori, I'll turn it back to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Steve, for handling the Q&A today. It's really great to see you. And thank you, Representative Newhouse, for the update. And thank you for all the work you're doing in our district to protect public health and restore our economy. I also just want to thank your staff and our staff for working to organize today's luncheon. It's always a great pleasure to work with your team, and I just want to recognize our team. They're all in the background today helping to make this event run smoothly. As you can imagine, there's lots of moving parts, but I just want to thank all of them as well. So it wouldn't be a chamber luncheon without door prizes, and so we found a way to continue that tradition as well. We have a couple of bottles of wine to give away from one of our fantastic members, Chandler Reach Winery. And so congratulations to Paul Hansen of Community First Bank and Rebecca Dobbs with STCU. So their names were randomly drawn prior to the start of today's program. And Elizabeth Holt will be in touch with you soon to help you collect your prize. So before I wrap up today, I'd like to again thank Congressman Dan Newhouse for your congressional update. Dr. Ashby, thank you, and Battelle for your sponsorship of today's luncheon, and all of you for joining us virtually today. There is a video of our luncheon which will be posted on the Chamber's YouTube page and also shared on Facebook. So our next virtual luncheon will be held Wednesday, September 23rd. Congressman Newhouse talked about Hanford and how important it is to our community. Our speaker will be Brian Vance, who's the manager of Richland Operations and the Office of River Protection at the Hanford site. He'll speak about Hanford risk reduction and working through COVID-19. So we look forward to that. You'll be able to register for that luncheon starting tomorrow at tricityregionalchamber.com. And last but not least, the Chamber is working on a big project to help voters decide which candidates have business interests at heart. We'll be conducting candidate forums prior to the ballots dropping in October. So please watch for more information about the forums on the Chamber's Facebook page and in our electronic newsletters. So this is the close of our luncheon, and I'd like to thank all of you for attending and participating, and I hope that you all have a great day. So thank you so much.